The first thing Veylan noticed about the man standing beside the broken wooden gate was that he looked like someone who had forgotten what it meant to ask for help. His hands were rough, his shirt was faded from years of work, and there was a tiredness in his eyes that no expensive suit could ever hide. The second thing she noticed was the little girl watching him from the farmhouse window. She had one hand pressed against the glass, her dark curls falling around her face, and when the man turned toward her, his entire expression changed. The exhaustion disappeared. For one brief moment, he looked completely at peace. Mara had arrived in a black luxury SUV expecting to meet a struggling farmer her father had once helped. She had not expected to meet a single father whose quiet strength would make her question everything she believed about success, family, and love. Before we begin, if you believe that kindness can change a person's life and that everyone deserves a second chance, please like this video, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, leave a comment, and subscribe to spread love daily. Stories like this remind us that sometimes the people who need saving are the ones who teach us how to live. Mara was the 34-year-old CEO of Veylan Horizons, a company her father had built from a small office into a respected national business. She had grown up surrounded by opportunity, but she had also learned early that love could disappear without warning. After her mother died when Mara was 17, her father buried himself in work. Mara followed his example, believing that ambition was safer than attachment. Years later, she had become known for making difficult decisions without hesitation. She could walk into a boardroom, face 20 angry executives, and calmly change the direction of an entire company. What she could not do was sit alone in a quiet room without feeling the weight of everything she had lost. That morning, she had driven several hours into the countryside because her father had insisted she meet someone named Callan Rourke, a widowed farmer who owned land connected to a project her company was considering. Her father had also given her one strange piece of advice before she left. He said Callan needed a wife. Mara had laughed at the absurdity of it, assuming her father was joking. He was not. Callan lived on a modest farm surrounded by open fields, weathered fences, and distant blue mountains. He was 38, broad-shouldered, with dark brown hair, a short beard, and the permanent tiredness of a man who had been carrying responsibility for too many years. His wife, Elara, had died 3 years earlier after a sudden illness, leaving him to raise their 7-year-old daughter, Juniper, alone. Callan had refused to sell the farm even when the bills became overwhelming because it was the only place where his daughter still felt close to her mother. Every morning he prepared Juniper's breakfast, packed her school bag, repaired whatever had broken overnight, worked the fields, and somehow found enough energy to read her a bedtime story. He had stopped thinking about his own dreams a long time ago. Mara stepped out of the SUV in a cream-colored business suit, carrying a leather briefcase, and immediately felt ridiculous standing beside the dusty farm road. Callan greeted her politely but without the nervous excitement she was accustomed to seeing from people who recognized her company name. He simply explained that the fence needed repairing and that he had only a short time before Juniper returned from school. Mara looked toward the farmhouse and asked if he was expecting someone. Callan told her his daughter would be home soon. Then Mara remembered her father's strange comment and finally asked why he had told her that Callan needed a wife. Callan's expression hardened. He said that her father had apparently decided that because he was a single father, he must be lonely and therefore needed someone to complete his life. Mara expected embarrassment or anger. Instead, Callan quietly explained that he did not need a wife. He needed enough strength to keep being a father. That answer stayed with Mara. She had spent her entire life surrounded by people who measured relationships by usefulness. Who could help whom? What could be gained? What could be protected? But Callan was standing in front of a broken fence, worrying more about whether his daughter had remembered her lunch than about losing his farm. Mara suddenly realized that she had come expecting to negotiate a property deal, yet the man in front of her had nothing to negotiate with except his dignity. The meeting changed when Juniper came running across the field after getting off the school bus. She was carrying a small paper bag and wearing a backpack decorated with faded stars. She stopped when she saw Mara and stared curiously. Callan introduced them, and Juniper politely asked whether Mara was the lady who owned the company her grandfather used to talk about. Mara smiled and said yes. Then Juniper asked the question that broke through Mara's carefully guarded heart. She wanted to know if Mara had a family. Mara hesitated before admitting that she had a father, but no husband and no children. Juniper looked at her with the innocent seriousness only children possess and said that maybe Mara was lonely too. Mara almost laughed, but instead she looked away. Over the following weeks, the property negotiations continued, but Mara began finding reasons to visit the farm. At first she told herself it was business. Then she began helping Juniper with school projects, bringing books from the city, and sitting at the kitchen table while Callan prepared dinner. She discovered that Callan could repair an engine with his hands but struggled to understand spreadsheets. He discovered that Mara could negotiate a multi-million-dollar contract but had no idea how to make homemade bread. Their differences should have separated them, yet somehow they made the farmhouse feel warmer. Then disaster struck. A storm destroyed part of the farm's irrigation system, and a major buyer canceled a contract. Callan faced the possibility of losing everything. Mara offered financial assistance through her company, but Callan refused because he did not want charity. Mara became frustrated and reminded him that accepting help did not make him weak. Callan answered that he had spent 3 years trying to prove to his daughter that life could still be stable after losing her mother, and he could not bear becoming the man who depended on someone else to survive. That night, Mara finally understood why his answer had affected her so deeply. She had been doing the same thing all her life. Callan was trying to prove he could survive without anyone. Mara had built an empire for exactly the same reason. The next morning, Mara returned to the farm with a different offer. She did not offer Callan money. She offered him a partnership. Her company would purchase the farm's produce at a guaranteed rate and invest in modern irrigation, while Callan would remain independent and retain ownership. It was not charity. It was business, but it was also trust. Callan accepted. Months passed, and the farm slowly recovered. Juniper began smiling more. Callan laughed again. Mara found herself visiting not because of contracts but because she had begun to feel that the farmhouse was becoming a place where she belonged. One afternoon, while they stood near the same wooden gate where they had first met, Mara finally asked Callan what his father had really told him about her. Callan smiled and admitted that her father had once said Mara was successful, intelligent, and probably too stubborn to admit when she needed someone. He had also told Callan that if he ever met her, he should not try to fix her life. He should simply remind her that she did not have to carry everything alone. Mara was speechless. She realized then that her father had never truly been trying to find Callan a wife. He had been trying to bring two lonely people into the same place and hope they recognized something in each other. A year later, the farm looked completely different. The fences were repaired, the fields were thriving, and Juniper had planted a small garden beside the farmhouse. Mara had stepped away from some of her endless corporate responsibilities and discovered a life that did not fit neatly into a boardroom calendar. She and Callan never rushed into promises. Their relationship grew slowly, built on friendship, trust, and the simple understanding that neither of them needed rescuing. They only needed someone willing to stay. One bright afternoon, Juniper ran through the field carrying 3 wildflowers and proudly placed them into Mara's hands. She then took Callan's hand and Mara's hand and joined them together. Mara looked at Callan, and for the first time in years, she did not feel afraid of what the future might take away. She felt grateful for what it had already given her. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes that love can arrive when we least expect it, and subscribe to Spread Love Daily. Your support helps these stories reach people who may need their message more than we realize. And before you leave, I have one special request. Comment, "Kindness finds a way," below if you believe that sometimes the greatest second chances begin with simply allowing someone into your life. Because Callan never needed a wife to complete his family, and Mara never needed a husband to complete her life. What they needed was something far more precious, someone who could see the wounds they tried to hide and stay anyway. Sometimes love does not arrive like thunder. Sometimes it arrives quietly, through a dusty road, a broken fence, a child's innocent smile, and one simple reminder that you were never meant to carry the whole world alone.